We're going to call the meeting of the Prior Lake Savage Area Schools Board meeting to order. First item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. All members are present with the exception of Mary France, and we have a new member on the board tonight, and I will let her introduce herself.
I'm Charlotte Huntington. I'm the student council and class president at the high school. Thank you for having me tonight, and I'm excited for a fun year on the school board.
All right, thank you, and we look forward to your report at the end of the meeting. Next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. I have one additional item that I would like to add. Under A, new business, we're going to have the acceptance of the bids for Jeffers Pond and for Red Tail Ridge this evening. The bids were opened on Thursday, so they didn't make it into the packet, but you have been provided a paper copy of the bids, and Nexus representative is here tonight. So if the board decides to move forward with the bid acceptance, we certainly may. If we want to put that off, it is also our prerogative to do that also. So with that, do I have a motion for the approval of the agenda with that added item under new business?
So moved.
By Ben, do I have a second?
Second.
By Lee. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? That passes 6-0. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are considered to be routine in nature and will be enacted by one motion. There's no separate discussion of these items unless the board has requested previous to the meeting. There was none. So on tonight's consent agenda is the check wire transfer disbursement summary, the wire transfer, the EFT and ACH banking activity, the building bond investment report, the approval of the school board minutes from July 9th and July 23rd of this year, resignations, terminations, and non-renewals. Do I have a motion for the acceptance of the consent agenda?
So moved.
By Todd, do I have a second?
Second.
By Stacy. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That passes 6-0. Next on the agenda is there's no gifts to receive tonight, so there's no need for the resolution. Next on the agenda is Laker Pride, presented tonight by Superintendent Dr. Stallo.
Good evening, everyone. This is always a highlight of our board meetings, being able to celebrate some of the great things and people who make great things happen across the district. As you know, because we are an E-STEM district, environmental education, science, technology, engineering, and math, we have a lot of focus at all of our schools about special festivals or special days in which we really highlight and enhance the work that's being done in E-STEM. Traditionally, we've had E-STEM days at all of our elementaries, and I'm really pleased tonight for us to celebrate our first ever middle school E-STEM day. And joining us this evening, Simone is going to kick things off and share a little bit about the hard work and the outcomes of this really amazing day that our students participated in, as well as our staff. So thank you, Sue. I will let you take it over from here.
Thank you, Dr. Stallo. Thank you, everyone, for inviting me in to highlight Middle School E-STEM Day. It is the first, as Dr. Stallo said, and it was due to the hard work of teachers working across the campuses and across disciplines this time to create some really engaging hands-on experience for our students. They also really invited community members into their classrooms, and they included experts that were truly rocket scientists, 3D printing engineers, experts from the Raptor Center, from the Minnesota Department of Forestry, as well as our very own director of child nutrition, Emily Malone, who spoke on how Laker Marketplace has been making improvements to decrease our carbon footprints by delivering our lunches every day. So students were able to listen, explore, create, and many of them even gave back to the community. At Hidden Oaks, the 8th graders created or assembled 2,600 sandwiches for the Sandwich Project of Minnesota. And over at Twin Oaks, they raised $2,600 for clean water in South Sudan. They had a whole water focus for part of their day as well. But I thought it'd be best to really ask some of our students and our teachers and administrators to come in and share their highlights of the day. So first, I'd like to invite Sonia Pirani to come up to our podium. Sonia is going to be a 7th grader at Hidden Oaks Elementary School. She is already a founder of her own charity work called Sonia's Hope for Children. She is a volunteer recipient of Be the Change. She is also a community action partnership ambassador for both Scott, Dakota, and Carver counties. And near and dear to my heart, she's a Minnesota State Park junior naturalist. So here is Sonia.
Hello, everyone. According to the U.S. Department of Commerce, STEM occupations are growing at a 17%, while other occupations are growing at a 9.8%. STEM degree holders have a higher income, even in non-STEM careers. Science, technology, engineering, and mathematic workers play a key role in sustained growth and stability of the U.S. Per the National Science Foundation, in the 21st century, scientific and technological innovations have become increasingly important as we face the benefits and the challenges of both globalization and a knowledge-based economy. To succeed this new information-based and highly technological society, students need to develop their capabilities in STEM to levels much beyond what was considered acceptable in the past. We are now global citizens, and what I mean by global citizens is that we're now part of an emerging, pluralistic society, which demands globalized innovations, which comes from STEM education. I personally think STEM education is crucial for the 21st century. My reasons for that is STEM is hands-on, ignites creativity in various ways, brings me closer to my environment, and helps me think outside the box. Learning about the environment, science, math, engineering, and technology inside and outside the classroom brings an innovative side of me because it enhances and fosters my learning via research, investigations, and practical abilities. This allows me to hardwire myself to equip for an emerging, global, innovative society. When I get exposed to the environment, it makes me more tolerant, sensitive, and makes me appreciate the world around me in a much better way. In addition, STEM promotes active learning, leadership, teamwork, and student-teacher collaborations. On May 18th, we had STEM Day at Hidden Oaks. Here are my personal examples about what we actively learn via various activities. Time management, eating healthy, managing stress, standing up for oneself, sleeping habits, and exercise benefits. Right here you can see the pictures of our STEM Day. In conclusion, STEM education is crucial for globalized citizens, and it facilitates our ability to be world leaders. It is our school leaders' responsibility to continue to create these world leaders, and that is possible through STEM education. Now I'm open for questions. Maybe you can help answer a few of them. Thank you for listening.
Questions for Sonia?
I saw the slide there. I have one if no one has. The weather balloon launch, how many years have you been doing that?
Just a second year
Okay. So
for the
you're
8th
able
grade.
to capture data then? That's
Yes, they're able to
transmitted?
capture the data, and then now it's going
Okay.
to be able to have comparative analysis over at least 2 years, and hopefully we'll have a third launch
Okay.
in the next spring.
Good.
We would like to also invite Missy Short and Amanda Fay, 2 of our teachers, to talk about STEM Day.
All right. I never thought I'd want to go after her. Let's give her a round of applause. That was awesome. Thank you. Said to Miss Faye, I was like, I don't think I want to go after her. So I was just going to talk a little bit about what you would see for the students if you were there and you walked around. Students were hands-on learning experiences. It was engaging. It was laughing. It was fun. And students were collaborating with one another. They were involved in experiences that were, taking them outside maybe their comfort zones and involvement of what they would maybe do during the regular school day. And above all, it was just an experience of taking them outside into the environment of the classroom that's not just inside the four walls, but in the learning of the environment that we see outside. And I think when I walked around, and I think administrators and other teachers would say this, that you would see that the students were highly engaged in active learning experiences throughout the day. And I think that that kind of fits in with what our mission statement does for having our students be 21st century learners. And I think that that really demonstrates part of what we're looking for in our East End program in the district.
Hi, I'm Amanda Faye. As a specialist between both Twin and Hidden Oaks middle schools, it was pretty awesome because I had the opportunity to pretty much go into every team and help them move forward with their plans for the day from the first stage. And so coming up with a theme where every grade level asks the students first, what are you interested in? What do you want to learn about? And then they use that data to formulate what their students were going to learn about on that day. So for example, 8th grade Twin Oaks teachers planned a day revolving all around the global water crisis. And so they read a story, they worked together with their English teacher and their social studies teacher, and they read and analyzed a text about the global water crisis in South Sudan, which they then raised money for. And then they actually went on their own long walk to water around the campus, which is about a mile. And they also built water filters and tested water. And then in the end, they made a PSA video to kind of inform other people about what they learned that day. So that's just one example of what some of our students were learning. Now I'm going to introduce Dr. Edwards to wrap it up for us.
So May 18th was a culmination of a lot of work and planning that began over a year and a half prior to that event, and the planning continued throughout the entire school year. And our staff, I think the best part of all of it when we delivered it on the 18th was the strong sense of collaboration among staff, talking about the interdisciplinary work that was done and helping the students to see those connections that were going on, not just on May 18th, but leading up to May 18th. And I think that was really the highlight for us as we look forward to our continued implementation. And we'll be discussing this upcoming BUILT meeting that's coming up on Wednesday, talking about how we continue the great work that we started and keep it going and continue to bring that collaboration and that interdisciplinary work together.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would like you to come back up and get some certificates quick. Our mission statement is to educate all learners to reach their full potential as contributing and productive members of our ever-changing global community. And the pictures and the story and our students' voice and the hard work of you as staff members as well as your colleagues who, Dan, as you said, I think you started pretty much day one last year planning this, and the teachers worked hard and worked collaboratively to make something really amazing for kids. And Sonia, thank you for sharing your experience, because that's what we want. We want engaged students who are really looking to better not only their own lives and the lives in our community, but well beyond it. So thank you very much. So if you would come up to receive a certificate, please.
Represent the Lakewood Marketplace that also did similar work, so you'll get that Emily. Great, thank
Those
you
stand
very
there.
much.
Picture?
Wait, one more. Oh. Thank you.
Next on the agenda is personnel items, and I'll hand that over to Mr. Matt Mons.
Speaking of going after somebody, I always get to go right after Laker Pride, so I hope you're all excited for a little personnel fun as we transition here. So first up tonight, I recommend the following candidates for employment and am seeking board approval.
Do I have a motion for the acceptance of candidates for employment?
So moved.
By Lee. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Ben. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? That passes 6-0.
And next, I present the following leaves of absence and am seeking board approval.
Do I have a motion for the approval of leaves of absence?
So moved.
By Melissa. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Stacy. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? That passes 6-0.
And next, I present the following four retirements, and just to go through that very briefly here, Sharon Hart, a custodian at Westwood, most recently at Westwood with 20 years of service. Valerie Humbert, media support at Five Hawks with 21 years of service in the district. Mary Croyer, child nutrition helper, who's been with us for 6 years at Twin Oaks. And then Kendrea McCready, student support para at Twin Oaks with 19 years of service in the district. So very big thank you to those employees, and just wishing them the very best of luck as they continue their adventure.
Do I have a motion for the approval of the district retirements?
So moved.
By Todd. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Ben. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? That passes 6-0.
And next, I'm requesting that the board take action on the following contracts and then also terms and conditions of employment for a significant number of our single positions and then also small group positions in the district. Just to note that there will be, there's about 100 to 150 staff members who are not represented here that we've not taken action on yet, and we'll continue to work with those individuals as we've discussed prior as we move forward.
Do I have a motion for the 2018-2020 agreement in terms of conditions of employment?
So moved.
By Todd. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Stacy. Are there any questions or comments? I have one. The numbers we see in as percentage increase, how does that relate to all other certified groups?
That number is consistent with what we've seen in all other certified groups, as well as the increases to insurance rates will follow what's pre-existing in the agreement, so there aren't any material changes within that language. And then, as we've discussed in closed session to some extent, we have done some market analysis for a number of our positions and looked at that to see that we're not falling behind in a total package sense with other surrounding districts.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That passes 6-0.
And next up, we do have a licensed staffing request, and I'm also going to forecast an upcoming licensed staffing request. So this is so that we can get out ahead a little bit and do some posting for some specialist positions. So these are elementary specialist positions that will come if we need to add additional sections at the elementary. It's looking right now with our enrollment numbers that we could run right up against and kind of meet where our projections were, which is fantastic. We do want to be ahead of the game, though, so at our study session, I do anticipate that we'll be bringing a request for an additional 2 sections of elementary staffing, just in case, so that we're prepared if our enrollment does exceed our projections. However, we do have a pool of elementary candidates that we've been looking at from the spring through the summer. So we feel good about some of the individuals in that pool still. When it comes to our specialists, that's something where we may need to look a little further outside of the box. And so that's why we're coming a little more quickly here with a staffing request to correspond with a possible 2-section addition in the specialist end.
All right, do I have a motion for the acceptance of 2018 to the 2019 licensed staffing request?
So made.
By Stacy, do I have a second?
Second.
By Lee, are there any questions or comments? Go ahead, Stacy.
There's the 2-section increase then would be equivalent to this .4, so an additional.
That's correct.
0.4?
Yep.
Okay, so, okay, I just want to make sure.
Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? That passes 6-0. And one more.
And next, yes, presenting an educational support staffing request for 18-19. One is for a slight addition in staffing at the Edgewood, for Edgewood Lola del Lago, as they look to add their fourth grade there. They need a little bit of additional staffing to accommodate that, to have a successful year. And then, they're looking at a varsity assistant football coach. That would be a booster-funded position. One additional note I would make there is that that has been reviewed for with Title IX considerations in mind. And then secondly, looking at 2 additional cheer coaches at the high school level, and those positions would be paid for by the increased participation in the cheer program there.
Okay. Do I have a motion for the acceptance of the 2018-19 educational support staffing request?
So moved.
By Melissa. Is there a second?
Second.
By Stacy. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? That passes 6-0. There's no unfinished business tonight. Next on the agenda is new business, facilities, planning, and construction, presented tonight by Assistant Superintendent Mr. Holmberg.
All right, good evening, Chair Wolf, members of the board, Dr. Stallo. Welcome, Charlotte. I, too, also like this part in the board meeting because I typically follow Matt and that excellent personnel presentation. He's a tough act to follow. So we have a very lengthy presentation for you this evening because there's a lot going on with facilities and construction. Once I'm completed here, I will ask Mr. Delwo and Jeff Martin from Nexus Solutions to join me at the front to talk through the Jeffers Pond Red Tail Ridge bid components. So the portions that I'm going to be speaking about tonight, I'm going to be taking you through an update on Prior Lake High School, be talking about Twin Oaks and Hidden Oaks Middle School, and for the initial review, the draft purchase agreement between Prior Lake Aggregates and the school district. So to break this down, we have several outcomes tonight. The first one is informational. As we look at the high school project, we're on course, or on par, I guess, to seek board approval on the designs, or on the conceptual designs, in September. And since that's quite a large project, we made the decision to pull out portions of the project and start putting those into this meeting, our work session at the next meeting, and in September. So as a board, you have a chance to look through that more specifically, and then have a more robust discussion at the upcoming work session, and ultimately when we take action. So with that point in mind, I am going to point out that I did intentionally put some pictures of renderings in for the activity main office and not necessarily weight room and locker room, but just to give you as a board a sense of just some of the things we're working on. The Finance Facilities Long Range Planning Committee has seen the 2D dimensions, and so we have our architects at Wold Engineers starting to put a little bit more, I guess, skin around into a 3D portion. So nothing is set, but it's just to give you an idea and to give the community an idea of really what this could look like as we move forward. So definitely a progress update. The second thing is we'll be going through the Twin Oaks Middle School and Hidden Oaks Middle School additions renovations, and we're seeking board approval tonight on those designs, and then going out for bid later on this fall. Okay, and then finally, I'm going to provide an overview and really an initial presentation tonight of that purchase agreement. I realize our committee members on Finance, Facilities, Long Range Planning have seen a couple of working drafts, but other board members have not. And so I'm presenting, we'll do a quick, or I guess an overview of just some of the components of it. If there are questions, I'd be happy to at least do what I can to answer them, as well as looking at the second B and C there. We will be bringing the purchase agreement back for a full discussion at the board work session on August 27th. Therefore, you have some time to really review the purchase agreement, and then, you know, we can have that discussion there. And then finally, I think as you've heard earlier this evening, requesting the opening the school board meeting on the 27th for business so that, you know, pending board acceptance moving forward, we can take action on it. Okay? So with that, these are the outcomes. Yes, sir?
And I'd like to add, in the interest, why don't we let Mr. Holmberg finish his presentation, and if you have any questions during the presentation, write them down, and then he will certainly answer them and go back to the renditions after his presentation. Thank you.
Before I jump into the outcomes of tonight, I do want to draw your attention to a bit of a in-house document that we created. As I've mentioned, Finance, Facilities, Long Range Planning has been having quite a few meetings and quite a few discussions around the construction projects, the different things that are happening, and looking at the Gantt chart. And while the Gantt chart is really a highly technical document, sometimes it isn't always easy to follow, and so a request came from the Finance Facilities Committee to somehow come up with a new working informational schematic for the different projects that are going on, and really some of those anticipated dates and things that are coming up as far as bids, when designs are coming forward. What we also may call them as Bid Pack 4 or Bid Pack 7. Oftentimes, you know, as board members or maybe as the viewing community, maybe not knowing what exactly those bid packs are, so we certainly have a column here for that. And so at our last Finance Facilities Committee, we did present this as sort of an informational component that will allow us to kind of track as we go through. And I can't stress, and I think I've mentioned it 3 or 4 times, it's informational. This is intended to move a bit, so you might see some of the dates move until they become bold, because once they're bold, that's when they're completed or the board has taken action on them. And so, but it kind of helps from a Finance Facilities Planning Committee and then ultimately for the board, just to give a sense of what we're forecasting here between now and December, and then ultimately when the projects are fully completed. So with that, I'll jump right into Prior Lake High School. So as you know, I'm going to start with a couple high level. As you know, we're going to have construction on almost every side of Prior Lake High School. The point here that tonight we're going to be talking specifically around the activity center and that north entrance. This is that overall. I have to get rid of the markings, otherwise it won't go to it'll continue on. But we're going to be talking specifically about this area here tonight, and really talking about the work or some of the input that we've received from our high school core team, our design team, and then also our subgroups. Again, we're going to be hitting this more in detail as we come up on the 27th, but I wanted to just give you a sense of some of their work. This is a little bit more specific on the ground level. You can see it's a 4-court activity center. We're going to be having storage around those areas, as well as seating, some limited seating on the lower level, and then also some new restrooms that are along that hallway into the blue gym, or adjacent to the blue gym. Certainly with an activity center, with the amount of after-school events, weekend events, having the proper facilities for athletes as well as spectators affords us the opportunity to have those additional restrooms as well as seating. And of course, the storage will allow us to store equipment, materials for physical education. Here is a more look at the second level. I'll just point out a couple things here. If you're familiar with the high school, this is our current lecture hall right here. We're looking at new front office where Dr. Bezic, principal, and our athletic director, athletic staff will be in this area here. Main secure entry, where all visitors are routed into the main office area, cleared before they're allowed to go into the rest of the building. We had a conversation around a multi-purpose classrooms here for health education that are used during the day. It'll have a movable wall so that it can be open to be a full 2 classroom space or 2 individual classrooms. It will also help after school events as well as weekend events. You see that second level of the forecourt activity center with the track that goes around it for physical education as well as for viewing if there's events that are happening on the courts. Secondly, certainly restrooms as well as concession stand, and then this area here having a large corridor that connects the auditorium with this activities area as well as the gold gym. And so when you have events that are happening, restrooms, but also areas for people to be out in the main corridor areas as things are going on in the high school. Okay. This Flex PE cardio room is the current weight room. One of the designs that was really highly important to the design group was, if you recall back on the previous point, the weight room was right over here, which is the current locker room. And so when you're doing free weights and lifts, it gets extremely loud underneath in the locker room. And so changing this weight room into a flex PE space and cardio and moving the weight room closer to the activity center, but also this area here on this slide is unexcavated. So there's nothing underneath it that would be a problem for students or athletes dropping weights, and creating that noise throughout the day or throughout the experience that's happening. That's really just kind of a 2D look that we've been talking about. We anticipate that, or not anticipate, but the design will be is that this will become the main entry to Prior Lake High School. As we get a little further in and talk about on the 27th, there will be some parking lot additions, so the parking lot on this north side will be about the equivalent as the parking lot on the east side. Our partners at Wold Architects and Engineers have put together some very preliminary renderings. These are not set in stone. These are all draft, but just to give you a sense of some of the things they're looking at. This is from the north looking at the activity center. You can see windows across the top for lighting that faces the north, so it's not direct sunlight, but also some taller windows to allow light into that space. You also see some different sign options or sign renditions. Again, nothing has been determined as far as signage or where things, but again, it starts to put a context or at least give a sense of really what the space could look like as we move forward with the design. Here's inside the track. You can see where those long windows are. There is a railing around the track, even though this rendering looks a little like there's a cliff there. There will be a railing on the home stretch of the track so nobody falls off. But you can kind of see what that would look like on the inside. And then here is really the north entrance. If you're familiar with the north entrance now, this here is the lecture hall, glass space right here. And you can see how that main north entry gets built in. The new office area, again, some different signage components. These areas here into these health classrooms for there. One of the things we had talked about too is really, having this be a distinctive north entrance so that when people drive up, they see it, they know that is the main entrance to the school. Here's another rendering, different sign component to it. And then here's just a look of what it could look like on the inside with the commons area, the space into the gold gym, and those classroom spaces. Again, this is all just a draft rendering just to give a sense of what it could look like. This is something we're going to continue to work through leading up to bring it back for full review in September. That's what I have for the high school. If you'd like, Chair Wolf, we can take maybe a
Why don't we have-
question or two
Yeah, if we have any
as we go
questions
through.
for Stacy, go ahead.
So, the lecture hall is still going to be able to be usable or not, or is it shrinking, or am I just not looking?
It is going to be usable, it is going to be redesigned. Currently, as you can see, here's our current look at the lecture hall. We have those long bench seats where it's one way in, one way out. We've been having discussions about pulling out the seating and having small group seating that could work for students, that will work for students, it will work for classes there, also work for team meetings, it will work for staff meetings, those types of things. But it actually increases the flexibility of the space by taking out those long rows and putting in more collaborative spaces with chairs, tables, and things like that. So it will be usable during the day, after school, before school.
And then, the weight room and the flex PE, the flex PE cardio room, then, is there gonna be some changes made in there just to kind of refurbish it? I mean, to make it more of a PE, cause it's really. quite
Correct, there
honestly a
will
weight
be,
room with
it will be
sweaty
refurbished,
stuff
so it
all
can
over.
be used for, used for dance, cheer, could also be used for aerobics, for classes that are offered by the Health Phy Ed department.
I think that's it for me.
Yeah, Melissa, any questions? Ben? Todd? I have one question. I see down by the lecture hall, there appears to be a door. Is that security for when there's an event in the evening? Talk about how we're going to secure the rest of the building when there's an event in the gym or in the track in the evening.
As we look at our high school is used, I presume your question is based on after-school events?
Yes, on a Friday night basketball
On a
game.
Friday night basketball.
Keep people from wandering through the rest of the building.
Good question.
I have a variety of experts here between Jim and Dr. Bezek. Here's what we know on a Friday night with basketball. We know that our facilities are going to be used and that there's going to be space for people in the current commons as well as in this area here. The classroom wings will be closed off, but our school is largely open to be used in those commons areas, whether, for the fan experience. While we have the gold gym here, and we anticipate a lot of spectators coming in to go into the gold gym. So they come in through the main entry and go into the gold gym here. We also have an entry on the bottom too, and we may have spectators coming in from the east as well. And so, again, common areas being open and used for spectators as well as athletes, but locking down the areas where we do not need having the public access, which is those classroom wings, IT wings, and rooms that are not being used for that event. Did I miss?
And one nice thing will be being up in that area and having bathrooms up in that north entrance area. People want to stay where they need to. Right now, they naturally have to wander into the commons because there's no bathrooms near the gym or near the auditorium. Now there'll be bathrooms right. Have a need to go and wander off into another area. But it is tough to just lock off parts of it. Some of them are egress or, fire exits and all that.
Yeah.
But there'll be no natural need to go into the other parts of the building. So it will be easier to corral people or keep people where they should be. It's always going to be difficult to lock a building like that down.
Okay.
The other thing to remember is
even on nights when we have basketball games or another event in one of the gyms, usually we have robotics practice or something else happening, so there's still in that common space, there's still other activities happening.
Thank you. Lee, did you have any questions?
No, I just wanted to know about the bathrooms.
Okay. Okay,
Okay.
all right, thank you.
All right. I will move on to Twin Oaks Middle School. And I've shared a little bit about the process here. We started with our subgroups first, really looking at the specific areas of the renovations and additions, and then moving to the design team. And so we're here tonight or I'm here tonight, seeking to give you an overview, but also seek approval on this design moving forward. So looking at the upper level of Twin Oaks, you can see a classroom area wing that's being proposed. We had a lot of conversation around how this would be oriented. One of the things we need to understand and consider is that in this particular area, there's a lot of utilities in this area coming in and out of the school. The way that this addition is oriented minimizes the impact on utilities and moving utilities, and also providing the classroom space. One of the other components we looked at with this design is right now, as students come into Twin Oaks Middle School, there's really one main path through the middle school to get to this side of the building as well as the rest of the academic areas. This design provides another way for circulation for students to get to other parts of the building in addition to those additional classroom spaces. This is a very important feature of this design from a circulation standpoint, as well as, and I'll talk about this in a little bit, provide for additional classrooms and then also resource and breakout spaces for student learning. Here's an outside look of what the rendering is. It's really a ways up there. I apologize. You might be that osprey that's sitting on that current light post that's on Laker Field flying around. But as we look at this, here's the new addition as it comes through. We do have skylights coming into that to allow sun and access into that walkway area. Our classrooms here with our main walkway. This is a resource area in the corner, as well as classrooms and a resource area here that is adjacent to the art room area there, so that they can be able to do art, but as well as break out into that resource area. Here's an internal look of the hallways, as well as just, again, that resource area, again, for circulation, again, restrooms, breakout space, interior perspectives for this area. As we continue to get more color palette selected, this will begin to certainly look more than just like block walls and renditions of gray and things like that. Here's an external look at that resource area. Again, allows sunlight in, allows a breakout space for students. This is also a walkway around that side with windows into the classrooms as well as into those areas to get into the building. Again, another look at that main classroom wing and resource area from the outside. And then where the addition connects with our current buildings and grounds DDC area, there will be an exit for egress, but not considered to be a main entrance or exit for students or for the public. Taking a look at the downstairs, this is an area that we spent a particular amount of time discussing, reviewing, designing. Cafeteria, the auditorium, and then the Phi-Ed Health locker room area. And there really was a tremendous amount of work here, tremendous amount of feedback, tremendous amount of creativity, and a lot of heads on this portion of the project. Another little look here, you can see the Phi-Ed space, cafeteria, auditorium, but also kitchen serving area. This is something that we're taking the old varsity locker room. I guess if you've been around the district for a while, when this used to be the high school. The old varsity locker room, which is not being used or used very limited, and making this into a space that's usable for students, providing a suitable space for adaptive physical education and storage, as well as providing a space for health instruction, which, by the way, allows us to create a larger cafeteria space at Twin Oaks, and I'll show you that in just a minute. What you see here are locker spaces. This locker room is adjacent to the pool, and so as students coming in using this locker area, you see individual showers. One of the things we learned through this process is that with showers being somewhat individualized, with students showering off before they go in and coming out, they need to be individual. The gang-type showers are no longer up to code, if that's correct, because the water that touches one person's feet cannot touch another person's feet. And so that's why you see a bank of interior showers here for swimming, which, aside from water on my feet, I think that's a nice feature for physical education. And also, too, we have locker areas, changing areas. This also, as we looked at the locker configuration, we were able to accommodate up to 30 more lockers for gymnastics, knowing that we went from a 6-court activity center to a 4-court, keeping gymnastics at Twin Oaks Middle School. We knew that there was a lack of locker room space, so we're providing 30 lockers for gymnastics. And then we're also providing some additional lockers in the event or when theater has a production in the auditorium. And I'll talk about this in a little bit, but beyond just being a locker room facility and health phy-ed area, this is also an area that could be used for dressing room, makeup for those different types of needs for students that are participating in an auditorium or community that are participating in an auditorium or a play or an event there. And so this really has become a space that's going to be going from not used or very used in a limited fashion now to being used with students on a daily basis for physical education as well as for co-curriculars. So we're really excited about the design here and the amount of time that went into it. On the cafeteria side, looking at this, if you're familiar or I just want to draw your attention to, this area here is an existing health room as well as an old small dressing room and 2 small restrooms. So by renovating that locker room space, we're able to take this area out, allow that to be a larger cafeteria, allow some windows in, take out 2 small restrooms that were not very usable, and a small dressing room that was not adequate for the needs of the theater and production area. It also, as we look at the kitchen, revamping the kitchen so that serving will happen over here in this area. So as students come through, they come through the serving area, go and sit, drop their dish. And so from a traffic and a flow, it makes much more sense. We're able, through this configuration, to fit all of the students for lunch and from 6th graders, 7th graders, 8th graders, as they come down into this one area. However, the administration at Twin Oaks could certainly have some tables down in this area for serving purposes as well, and make it maybe either a smaller area or a quieter area for students and programming. So it really is, again, a space that we're able to capitalize on and better serve students through this renovation. We are removing portions of this wall for circulation and this area here, so it's not a pinch point between these two, between this main lobby area and the cafeteria space. So, subcommittee working on the kitchen, design team working on the cafeteria, looking at configurations for students and being able to serve students, traffic flow, a lot of input and a lot of discussion in this area, in this particular area. And the same with Hidden Oaks as well too, but I'll get to that in just a second. From the auditorium side, this is really going to be an absolutely wonderful space after we're done with renovation. This was a space that is really needed some attention. And I believe it's served the district well, 40, 50 years, but definitely there needed to be some updates here. So the existing 299 seats, we're coming from 299 seats with no ADA accessible seats. After the renovation, we will be at 415 seats, which meets what we had communicated to the community, part of the referendum, including 6 ADA seats. And so being able to be a much more comfortable experience, allowing really half a grade level to be in there for a particular announcement or class or some sort of event was important to us as well. The stage will be renovated, the old stage will be removed, new stage will be put in. So it's not a remodel, it's not reusing the wood, it's a new stage that's being put in because the current stage is out of repair. This is one area that I think our group has been really excited about, and the subgroup around this area. If you recall, when this space was originally designed, and I don't recall it, I wasn't here at the time, but people tell me, there used to be the opportunity to divide this into 3 spaces, and you could make this into 3 smaller rooms. So you have these big accordion doors, and there's a big accordion door that's tucked back in this space here. Through this renovation, the accordion doors are not used anymore, and so those can be removed. It allows us to have a public entrance, a workroom, as they create stage materials, and then access to bring it out onto the stage. From an internal sense, you get a sense of really what this could look like. All the seats will be replaced, the new seats are being put in. And again, this is a space that really is coming together very well, and it will be just an absolutely excellent space to serve the district for the next 40 to 50 years, if not longer. Questions on Twin Oaks?
Do we have any questions from board on Twin Oaks design? Go ahead, Stacy.
Just at the beginning when you were talking about the flow, so I just want to make sure I have that clearly. So are they going through what is now that little like counselor office? Is that, I mean, isn't that what's straight in there? Isn't there a counseling office?
So currently, here's our current counseling
Yeah,
office
there.
right here.
Right.
This is a classroom. This one here is a classroom. That classroom is being replaced as part of one of the new additions right here.
Okay.
And this will become like a resource area leading into a hallway so that students have the ability to get to those classrooms. And it diverts traffic instead of having all students go down this main area.
But you're still
Around the
going through a
office.
couple doors to get into that, right? Am I seeing that right? I mean, you're going through, right? I mean, aren't you going through a couple doors to get to that?
This
orange
here,
Yeah, to get to there.
yes, but that will be opened up.
Oh, okay. So it's like more,
It'll be a corridor type
oh, it'll be a
hallway.
corridor, okay. I was just thinking they were going through more doors that somewhat restrictive, but I get it, okay. And then on the auditorium, is there like new sound? Did I
Yes.
see that on, did I miss that?
New sound and
Yeah.
light.
Okay.
And so we are receiving, that has to be updated. Something we're also doing too, our group has spent a lot of time looking at booth, sound, light in this space, which is really a nice generous space up there, but you also have to have some separation for sound and light so that you're in tune with what's happening on the stage, but also being able to retool the storage area here and renovate that to provide them with more storage that they need. But yes, new lighting systems, new sound systems.
So are they actually gonna be having more storage this way with this design, with the added
They
workroom?
typically, yes, they typically will have storage here in this area. This area is all new because right now that's currently where the accordion doors are housed. And then currently they have storage all along this back wall. I don't anticipate that going anywhere. And then they sort of have a loft where there's storage up on this side here, that where there's a ladder that goes up. So it is more storage for them and a renovated space through this project.
Okay. That's it for me.
Melissa, any questions?
From a security perspective, I'm excited to see that there's that optional flow for traffic, just, I know personally that bottom part is just, it's a mess. So it's really glad to see another option there, both ways.
Ben, any questions? Todd? Just one for Mr. Edwards. When I toured last year, you showed me where there was the outdoor faucet. Is that going to stay there as a?
That's actually part of the wall that, where those pillars were.
Yes, you're removing part of the wall by the cafeteria, and in my tour, he showed me where the outside wall used to be, because there's an outside hose faucet right on that wall in the interior. Will that remain?
Two markings of pillars that Jeff had pointed out earlier, right? Yep, right in there.
Are we gonna keep that faucet as a
I don't
keepsake?
know, man.
It'd be handy to hold stuff down.
There you go. All right. Just joking. Lee, any questions?
No, I don't have any.
You know, I think it's interesting too, as you brought this corner up, there was a lot of engineering and discussion around that corner because, correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, but this area here was the original corner of the building.
Correct, yep.
And so there's a lot of stuff that connects there. So changing and moving that corner requires a lot of making sure the rest of the building it's structurally sound. And so there was a lot of work, a lot of prep, and coming up with a solution that's going to allow that space to be opened up and allow it to remain structurally sound for the district.
Thank you.
Hidden Oaks, I'll keep moving here. We've got several different areas that are happening. A remodel the existing cafeteria, readjust serving line. We've got, and then 3 classroom wings and some resource wings on the back side of the building. And then reconfigured locker rooms and a new Phi-Ed flex space. So here's again, taking a look at really what it looks like from the top. To orient yourself, this is Fish Point Road out here. So this is the main entry into Hidden Oaks as you come into the building. Okay. Looking at the cafeteria, currently the cafeteria has an angle to it, like this. Part of our renovation will be to bring it all back and create a rectangular space for students. It allows for more seating. It also allows for, if you remember the Westwood cafeteria area, a lower ceiling as well as a higher ceiling. So with this allows us in this darker area to have a higher ceiling for students, or a higher ceiling in that area as well as a lower area. And then retool the serving area to allow more students to come in. There currently is like a small office right here. I believe it's where students get a la carte items. That's being removed in order to make it a more efficient space as kids are coming through. They're still selling a la carte items, of course, but just in a different way. Here's an internal look at that cafeteria space. Windows largely to the east, and you can see we're seeing a different assortment of tables there, from round, oblong, for student choice, as well as like a seating area around the periphery of the area that's shown right here. So we anticipate to have some high top seating, around a counter space, provide students just some different seating options and eating options during their cafeteria time. Here's what an external look looks like as you look at the outside. Again, you see you see that row of windows around the top to let that natural light in, as well as capturing the eastern sunlight But by the time kids are having lunch with the sun to the south, we're still capturing that sunlight, but it's not going to be directly into, to create glare into that area. Here's a very busy looking, this actually is a rendering that shows the flooring of the Phi Ed flex space that's being built in between Gym C and the pool, or the mechanical area of the pool. And so we have a new side entrance there to the south with a multi-purpose flex room. We're looking at some cardio different options and existing curriculum that we're offering to students. From TRX straps, there might be some, we're looking at a couple of treadmills in there, more circuit type training for students and personal health. This is what the inside will look like. Our Phi Ed staff was highly engaged in talking about current curriculum offerings that would be an ideal match for this type of setting, as well as potential opportunities for boys and girls in the middle school curriculum. Certainly talking about stations, personal fitness, getting kids engaged in a way that's aligned to best practice with health. This is what an outside rendering would look like. If you're familiar with this side of the building, this shows a very flat surface. That's not flat. And so there is some civil engineering that's happening. Number one, for ADA accessibility for a ramp, because there is an elevation change there, as well as steps for community students to use this area as they come into the building. Another rendering. And then also shifting to the locker room. We originally intended to renovate this Phi Ed office in order to allow for more lockers. We were able, through the design process, we were able to determine we could add existing lockers, renovate existing locker rooms without renovating this Phi Ed space, or this Phi Ed office space. And so we were able to achieve some cost savings here while still achieving our end outcome of adding more lockers and renovating the locker space for middle school students. On the back side, from a classroom wing, multi-purpose wing, you get a sense of what that looks like there too. Part of this in the middle is a multi-purpose room, a dual classroom for students, large group learning. You can also see on the outside here, or next to each side, there's going to be a resource area where it will extend the current resource areas in those spaces. That's the other side. And that's what I have for Hidden Oaks.
All right. Are there any questions regarding the Hidden Oaks Middle School design? Todd?
With the renovations of the locker rooms, are we still the same issues with the showers? Is that?
So that's a great question. Given that it's an existing shower,
Okay.
it can remain as it is. But since since the current showers at Twin Oaks are not operational, that's why there has to be a total rehaul. Yeah. Good question.
Okay. I think, do we want to take the motion for the approval of the design and the approval to go out for bids? Do I see that from the board? Would someone be willing to make a motion?
So moved.
So moved by Todd. Do I have a second for that motion?
Second.
By Lee. Are there any additional questions or comments for Mr. Holmberg or the staff? Seeing none. Okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? That passes 6-0.
Thank you. I know I can't stress it enough, like all design teams, the amount of time and energy by our administration, by our by staff, and I'm kind of foreshadowing with the high school as well, but with the middle schools, just the amount of work that the subgroups have done, really getting to a place where it meets obviously the letter of what we went out in the referendum in a very workable space for students at the end. So we're moving with this approval tonight. We're going to continue to move forward, determine color palettes, those types of things, and continue on with that process. Thank you. Can I go to the next thing?
Yes.
All right. So in your board packet is the purchase agreement for your review. Again, tonight, I'm presenting it to the board really as a first look, first read. This has come to finance, facilities, long-range planning, a couple different times as we've gotten close to the end with this process. And so tonight, I'm putting it, it's in the board packet for your review, ultimately public review, and then coming back on the 27th for a full discussion on the components of this. I do want to hit a couple highlights of this purchase agreement. You know, as you look through this agreement and start to read through it. On page 1 is the purchase price and payment. I just want to point out that the purchase price per acre is the same as what it has always been. Couple years ago, certainly with the non-binding letter of agreement, you know, in the conversations with Bill Pearson, that was the amount that was indicated, and the family has continued on with that commitment, and that part is reflected here in this agreement. The number of acreage that we're looking at is 17.42 acres, which then gets us to our $1,045,200 for the purchase of this land. Page 2 is the closing date of May 15th. Again, I'm just giving some highlights. You know, certainly I'd invite you to read through this. You know, as you go through this document, I just want to point a couple things out. Page 4 is the buyer's objection, October 31st, as we look at that within title, those types of components as we work through the process. Number 6, while it is an active mine site, we do have in there around hazardous materials and storage tanks that, again, is a further benefit. Obviously, it's standard language, but also, as we know, as the land is being put back in a manner that's suitable for commercial building, that it's important that it's been acknowledged there's no hazardous materials on this property. We have a contingency date of January 31st, 2019. Again, it's another date for the district as we continue to move forward towards closing, being able, again, to look at this throughout the process. Page 10 has it around the mining activity and grading work. So these are the appendices where we have the mining area and the base grading plan, and I'll talk about those in just a second. Page 11, specifically 11.3, the reclamation of the mining area. This is one component that we spent a lot of time on as a district team, as well as talking with Prior Lake Aggregates. This is where we worked with our partners from Braun Intertech and Nexus Solutions and Anderson Johnson in ensuring that as the site is reclaimed, it is in the best possible condition and site conditions for putting a commercial style building on this property. The district proposed these requirements and Prior Lake Aggregates accepted it. And so this is very important to us in this entire agreement, that as this site is brought back to a site that can be built on, it is to the specifications that we desired, and it is the most desirable condition that we would hope for or could have hoped for in this agreement. And then at the end, obviously there's some signatories. I believe in the past with signatories, it's been our Executive Director of Business Services, Julie Sink. It's been our superintendent, so it would be Dr. Stallo, and then a board representative. And so we would certainly add the appropriate signatories to these sheets into where it's appropriate. On page 21, Exhibit C, the base grading plan. This is a basically a mock-up rendition of how we would anticipate a possible site looking for with a new elementary school. On the bottom, you see parking for the public and a loop for families to drop off. You also see a bus loop to the top along 157. There's a 156, Jim. along the north side road.
Six.
6th. This is really important. None of our elementary schools have a separate public parking lot and a bus loop. So this is really important to have a site that allows for a separate bus loop as well as and a separate community parent loop. As we've talked about before, it's contiguous to the fields on SS9 and then also the fields that are currently there. And this is a site that will, number one, afford for an area for students of this elementary school, students of the district, as well as community for usage during the week, during the summer, things like that. And then we're looking at play fields to the west and then also to the north side of the property. So, again, those are just some of the things to draw your attention to. Again, I want to give you and afford you the time to read through this document, and we'll have that discussion on the 27th. So, with that, I'd be happy to take a couple questions if there are some that come to mind, or if anyone from Finance and Facilities want to speak to the process or this.
Are there any questions, first of all, for Mr. Holmberg? Why don't we start with Ben first?
In Finance and Facilities Commission, I think we've talked extensively about it, but just to confirm, obviously we didn't speak about it now, but the district's legal counsel has been intimately involved in the process, in the negotiation, in the writing and reviewing of the document in all stages, correct?
Every step of the way. After tonight, our legal counsel, Jay Squires, and I will be sitting down again to go through this document line by line, making sure that it is truly where we need it to be one more time before we come to the 27th. But our legal counsel has been great. Their legal counsel has been great and really going back and forth with comments, with drafts, with statements back and forth. So it's been a very good process. Our legal counsel has been extremely hands-on with this process, multiple times, multiple steps.
Todd?
I just want to publicly thank the Pearson family. I know Bill sat down with us back when I was the chairman, and Dr. Groover, who really started this, and we really appreciate that the family has honored his commitment. He was a loss to our community, and we just really thank them for their commitment. So.
Lee?
The only comment I'd make is you mentioned about the reclamation of the land, if that's the right word. And we did have some experts come and tell us how to do that. We didn't just decide that this is how we want it to look, that they came in and actually told us what needed to be done. So,
yeah. As you mentioned, that's a good point. Our legal counsel had a lot of hands on this. Our partners did too. So our civil engineer from Anderson Johnson had part of these specifications and timelines and dates, as well as from Braun Intertech from the soil composition and as well as Nexus. So it really was a team expert bringing their expertise to the table to make sure that this purchase agreement meets the district's needs.
Stacy?
I just had one comment. Just on the design itself, and I know we've done this at other schools, but I'm trying to find it. The fields, the baseball field and the grass field. Is there any way that those can be split apart? From a standpoint of usage? I mean, we did that at Red Tail, and there's actually 2 ball fields there.
Yeah.
The one really never's used that runs into this grass field, and they always use the one on the other side because it's split. You know what I mean? Because you're competing. I know they're both curricular things, but if there's space, I don't see of why putting it right on top of each other or not. But that was just a question.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. More meetings to be had.
Yeah.
And I think too, this is an example of really how this is scoped out. What's important about Exhibit C, and this was important to the PLA group as well, is you see this box that's in there, that's to represent a potential school. There are certain parts of that particular property that are mined a little bit more heavily than others. And so the northern part of the property is where a lot of the mining is taking place for the aggregate. And so what they were looking at is aligning it, knowing where we were anticipating from the mining concept, and making sure that as they were aware of where the school was going to be, and certainly paying attention throughout the process of as they reclaimed the site. With that being noted too, and it comes back to Lee's question or Lee's comment, is that as the site is reclaimed, our partners at Braun and Anderson Johnson will be monitoring the site reclamation process so that it is put to the specifications that are indicated in this agreement.
So before we even take ownership?
You
or
bet.
Okay.
Any more questions, Stacy?
No.
Go ahead.
Because timing is of the essence, what are the assurances that we have that we'll be able to take possession on a schedule and that the seller won't find additional mining needs and so on?
So that is all indicated in the agreement. So there's a date in there of December 15th when they will be vacated from that property and no longer mining that site. So pending board approval and signing it, and then them signing it as well, then it's a binding agreement. And all the dates that are in here assures the district that, you know, they're done mining at a certain time. We have a closing date, we have the reclamation, we have we will be monitoring as the site is restored, and we can move forward with constructing a new school.
Okay, thank you.
So they won't be able to back out.
Good.
Pending signatures.
I have one point I want to, as we discussed in the Facilities Committee, and to your point, Jeff, in section 11.3.2, it actually dictates that compaction will be tested for every 12 inches of lift and by a third party agreed upon by both the buyer and the seller, and shall issue a report. So Braun Intertech was agreed upon there, and it's listed there. So they'll be on site at least once a week, is what he said, testing that compaction and that reclamation. So, all right, are there any other questions right now?
Just have a comment as well. I want to echo Jeff's gratitude to the number of people who have been a part of the process to date, both with all the designs, but particularly with the PLA agreement to get us to this point tonight. It seems easy as Jeff's walking through this presentation, but this presentation represents hours and hours and hours of people's time, including board members, as you've reviewed the work along the way, as you've been a part of the Finance, Facilities, and Long Range Planning Group. So I want to echo that. I also want to give a gratitude and thanks to Jeff. He's done a fantastic job organizing and helping to lead this entire process, and certainly the negotiations and the work with PLA. So thank you. You've done a great job, Jeff.
All right, thank you, Jeff. So this will come back to the board study session on the 27th. Right. Next on the agenda was the addition for the acceptance of the bids for Jeffers Pond and Red Tail Ridge, presented tonight by Mr. Jim Delwo and your guest from Nexus.
Correct. Jeff Martin.
Jeff Martin.
Good evening, Chair Wolf, School Board, Dr. Stallo. I first would like to apologize for the way this document is coming to you today. It's a lot of moving parts. We opened bids on Thursday. So typically, we'd like to get ahead of FLRP and have time for everybody to look at it and review it. We don't have it this time. I did reach out to the board members on FLRP, and at least they had a heads up on it. And there's actually some really good news here. So with that, I'll let Jeff Martin.
Thanks, Jim. For those that haven't met me, I'm Jeff Martin with Nexus Solutions. So tonight, we have 5 bidders that seek your approval on. Bid package 1 are site utilities, earthwork, excavation, backfill, and site restoration as far as landscaping and asphalt pavement. Custom construction, $348,000. The second bidder would be construction results. It's a combination bid. When you go through our bid tab, the last page will have the combination bids on there. So they're bidding the general construction work plus the aluminum windows, storefronts, and entries. $1.289,000. Work scope number 4, plumbing, piping, and heating, that's RJ Mechanical, $214,500. HVAC and ventilation is our 5th work scope. That's all of our sheet metal work. That's general sheet metal, $78,887. And then the final contract is electrical, Phaser Electric, $119,900.
Okay. First of all, do I have a motion for the acceptance of the bid pack for Jeffers Pond and Red Tail Ridge?
So moved.
By Ben, do I have a second? By Melissa. Are there any questions for Mr. Delvaux and Mr. Martin?
Couple
Go ahead, Ted.
Couple bids came in as what, insufficient or documentation was insufficient?
Correct. That was contractor's affidavit,
Yep.
not included. I think that knocked out a low bid for electrical.
Electrical, both of the low bid, or 2 of the 3 low bid aluminum window contractors. The third one being construction results as well. They opted to combine their general construction number and their aluminum entrance number, give the discount of about $23,000 to the district for both contracts. And that decision to throw out those 2 low bidders, or actually all of the bidders, I forgot that responsible contractor verification form is consistent with district policy in the past.
Right. Is that issue with them not knowing what to do, or are other districts seeing that? Are you seeing that through other districts where they're not turning in all their documents?
They just forget. It's the people that have done this time have remembered in the past. They just, simple oversight. Not sure why, but they
Okay.
forgot.
Thank you.
Any, Ben?
And with, I guess, kicking the low bidders out for those 3, can you speak a little bit to the total cost in relationship to budget and what that looks like?
Sure. If you look at the rebid back in March, when the bids were open for Glendale, Five Locks, Red Tail, Jeffers. Jeffers and Red Tail went back to the design committee. They redid design, added some more scope to it for educational purposes, delayed the bidding until now, and pushed the construction back. So when we added the additional scope, we added additional budget to cover that scope. Now with the bid results we saw today, last Thursday, we're about $240,000 under that revised budget. And then if you compare it to bid results from March for all 4 buildings, combined with the 2 new bid openings we've had, we're about $850,000 under those old bid results from March.
Good news. Very good news.
And I'd like to thank Nexus for their hard work in reworking the bids, and recognizing that timing really does make a difference. It's been a lot of hard work for you guys too.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, seeing none. There's been a motion and a second. So all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? That passes 6-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the budget and enrollment timeline, tonight presented by Superintendent Dr. Stallo.
Thank you very much. We come to you, Julie Sink is not here this evening, so I am representing her request as we seek approval. First of all, for the budget calendar timeline, there are no changes to the budget calendar of past years, so we simply, as part of kicking off the process again at the beginning of this fiscal year, seek approval on the budget calendar.
Okay. Do I have a motion for the acceptance of the budget calendar?
So made.
By Stacy, do I have a second?
Second.
By Lee, are there any questions or comments? I have one. So the truth and taxation hearing is scheduled for December 10th?
Yep, that would be the second item in that as well. Yeah, that's the recommendation that we're making. Usually we put that as late as we possibly can because we don't always get that levy information that we need, but we are planning on bringing that forward with your approval at the December 10th regular meeting. And that'll just be at the beginning of the regular meeting at 7 o'clock. We'll start with that, the truth and taxation hearing, and then move into the board meeting as we have in the past.
All right. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the budget and enrollment calendar for 2018-19 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? That passes 6-0. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is the transportation update presented by Director of Operations of Transportation, Mr. Delwo. What's that? Excuse me one second.
Oh, okay,
Stacy,
technically.
you have a,
Well, I was just asking if we had to set the levy date, but since you talked about it, that was,
are you looking for a formal
it's in the,
motion and
on the
approval?
agenda. I don't-
Since it
I
was,
think we're fine as long as we've got the,
Martha's.
Martha, you want? Why don't we go ahead and have a formal approval of
okay.
that?
I'll
Okay.
make a motion
We're-
to set the levy date for December 10th.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Okay, Mr. Delwell.
Good evening again. Before you have a memo, I'm looking for approval to relax the walking distance within the Jeffers Pond attendance area, very similar to what we did at Glendale last year. I'd like to add some bus stops in the walking area to help relieve congestion at the school site. Very similar to what we did at Glendale, we've made some changes to where the buses are dropping, made some changes to the parking and drive. At Glendale, it was a huge success. Jeffers Pond is probably the worst site we have for that. We have cars stacked up out on 21, Jeffers Pass. So we are hoping that with moving the buses up to the top, allowing more cars to queue and offering busing within the attendance walking area, that we can make a serious safety improvement to that site.
All right, do I have a motion for the approval for the added bus stops in the Jeffers Pond attendance area?
So moved.
By Melissa, do I have a second?
Second.
By Stacy. Are there any questions or comments for Mr. Delwell?
I guess.
Go ahead,
It
Stacy.
worked well with Glendale, is what you're
It
saying.
has worked well. It's,
It has cut down.
you know, the advantage we're gonna have this year is that we're gonna start at the beginning of school. Glendale, we actually did it over MEA, and it's a little tricky at first, but it's worked out very well.
Okay.
Are there any other questions or comments?
I just
Go
need
ahead, Lee.
clarification. So I know we've got kids across 21 and we bus them because
They're all offered buses,
they're all
correct?
offered buses. Okay, so you're talking about kids that are on the
Jeffers Pass,
Pond side
south,
of,
yep, and
21.
maybe to the north a little bit too. There's some walkers in there.
okay. So just to have them picked up instead of the congestion of having
Offer
parents bring
busing
them in.
for those students,
Okay.
yep.
All right, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? That passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is School Safety and Security Enhancement Update presented tonight by Superintendent Dr. Stalo.
Thank you very much. We've had an opportunity over the last several months to share some information with you and to update you on some of the school safety and security enhancements that we've been working on. We've had a team of administrators that have worked throughout the summer to bring forward some changes aligned to some best practices to ensure that our students and our schools are as safe as they possibly can be. Dr. Dan Edwards and Dr. John Bizik will be sharing part of this presentation with me as well. If you could go ahead and advance. Thanks, Dan. The three areas that we're going to briefly update you on this evening, and we talked a little bit about it earlier, is the visitor management system that we'll be implementing this year. We think it's really important as school starts that we get a chance to publicly once again share this information with all of you and our viewing and listening public. We'll also talk a little bit about some training that some of our administrative team had this summer with the lockdown with options procedures that we'll be putting in place. And finally, we've been going through a process to review our crisis management plan, and we'll update to you on that briefly.
Sorry, it's stuck.
Got signed out here.
All right. I'm going to begin by talking about our Raptor Visitor Management System that we are getting ready to launch very soon here. As Dr. Stallo mentioned, our first priority is obviously the safety of our students, staff, and visitors. And as a result of that, we want to begin the school year by introducing the new Raptor Visitor Management System for all visitors who are coming into our facilities and requesting access beyond the office or check-in area. And that's a very important point of emphasis, is that that is who, so for example, if you're coming in, a common occurrence at the middle school level I can speak to is dropping off a pair of tennis shoes or an iPad or a lunch and just dropping it in the office. That will not require somebody to go through. They'll just drop it off and exit, and we'll call down the student similarly at each of our sites. But if a visitor is requesting access beyond the front office, that is when we will be implementing the Raptor Visitor Management System. It will help us to better track the visitors that are in our building, and it will result in a sticker that some of you at our board study session back in July had an opportunity to experience how that functioned, and scan your ID, and you have a visitor badge. Again, we are tomorrow morning, as a matter of fact, we are going to be having a training for all of our site staff that will be implementing the Raptor system, including secretarial staff and administrative staff, as well as campus supervisors at the high school, with emphasis on customer service. As we are implementing this visitor management system, we don't want to forget the importance of those who visit our schools on a daily basis, and making them feel welcome, while at the same time ensuring the safety and security of all present. So we'll be, as it states here, greeting each visitor, asking the purpose of their visit, asking for their government-issued ID, putting it into the Raptor system, printing the ID badge, and then asking the visitor to return that badge when exiting. The system will be in use during school hours while students are present. And so, again, as people come and desire to go beyond the main entrance area of each respective building, that's when we will implement that. Once somebody gives us their ID, it does screen that particular individual against a national sex offender database, as well as we'll call up any custom alerts that we put into the system, similar to the customer alerts that we have used in previous years in our Infinite Campus system. Will now be able to be entered into our Raptor Visitor Management System. Things related to court-ordered paperwork and custody concerns and things of that nature. It collects the first name, last name, date of birth, and a partial ID number, the last 4 digits of the ID, and the photo of any government-issued ID. So certainly, obviously, that includes driver's license, passports, military IDs, any of things that have the barcode on them. And we have, as you might expect, a comprehensive communication plan, thanks much in part to the leadership of Christy Mussman, our Director of Communications, that is coming forward out to our parents throughout the remaining weeks leading up to the start of the school year. There'll be notice going out to parents via from emails. We'll have postcards at back-to-school nights. We'll have posters in the buildings. We'll have an all-staff email, a press release. We're going to be doing some soft launching. We're calling it soft launch in our buildings next week and the week of workshop leading up to students entering. We'll be, again, communicating at all of our back-to-school nights. With our official launch dates for the first days of school, which for grades 6 through 12 will be September 4th, and for grades K through 5, September 6th. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues, Dr. Bezick and Mr. Delville.
We're double teaming the east entrance here. Good evening. We've had some questions about, securing the entrance at the high school. We've had the east entrance is the only entrance that's been open during the day. It's the entrance that everybody comes through. Currently, up until this year, it's one door has been unlocked, but it's always been manned or personed. There's always been a person there observing who comes in. We thought we needed to beef that up a little bit, and we're going to have that door locked with a buzz system and a camera, and the people that are our campus security people that are working there will people will come into the vestibule, they will not be able to come into the main part of the building once the day starts. So they'll have to get buzzed in and then check in with the Raptor system at that door. And then with the construction, the new entrance at the north side of the building will have a very similar to the middle schools and other buildings where people will come into the actual main office and check in. But we feel this is a good upgrade so that people feel more comfortable that that door is locked, that if something would happen and somebody would get distracted, nobody can just come into the building. There'd be a locked door. You have to wait until you get buzzed in to be able to come into the building. So I don't know if there's any questions on that or if I've missed anything there, Jim, but that's our plan going forward, and everybody's getting trained tomorrow on the Raptor system as well. So I'd like to thank Dan on that. A lot of work there, getting that organized and getting us all around so that we can, we want to be secure, but not, we don't want to be a pain. We want to make people feel that it's secure without being overbearing. So, and then I believe I have the next piece here. We're looking at the lockdown with options. You've heard people talk about, we've always been doing lockdowns for the last number of years, and a lot of groups are telling us that the Department of Education, the Department of Homeland Security are all saying that lockdowns alone are not enough. We need to do something beyond lockdown. So we felt that we wanted to do some in-house training, but we wanted to be grounded in something. So a group of about 10 of us went to Alice training with our Savage Lake Police Department. I believe Prior Lake has already sent an officer. They've been Alice trained. So you got 10 of us that have been Alice trained, certified to train others in those protocols. And while we're not going to use that exact protocol, we're going to follow a combination of Alice protocols and the Homeland Security protocols, and we're going to customize a program for the district here, and we're going to train staff and students. Right now we've been working on our PowerPoint and our training procedures, and we're also making a video that we're going to show secondary students. We'll also show all parents in the district, but we show it to the students 6 through 12 on our safety protocols. And basically what those are going to be is it boils down to the run, hide, or fight. We feel that much like if you were on fire, what would you do if you were on fire? Stop, drop, and roll. We figure run, hide, and fight is the new stop, drop, and roll. So we figure it's easy, it's almost self-explanatory, but we're gonna show a video, we're gonna train kids and staff and everybody on what does that mean. And we're calling it lockdown with options, because lockdown is still a very good option. Lockdowns are great, but they shouldn't be the only thing that you do. If something happens or somebody breaches your room, there should be other things that you're able to do, whether it's run away or as a last resort, you may need to fight back. And we're saying, people, you can do that instead of just being sitting ducks. We're saying, hey, we're giving people a basis to trust their instincts. There's always, you can't train for every scenario, but we can give you some good training so that you can trust what would happen if something would happen. And it's just not just for at school. It could be if you're at, a church event, if you're at a movie theater, if you're at a concert. These are just, again, unfortunately, a life skill that people should have in case something would happen. So we're getting ready to roll that out, and we've got a timeline in place. We believe that's going to be end of September, beginning of October. We want to have our video in place. We just shot that in the last 2 weeks, and the crew is putting that together because we think that a lot of what, the picture's worth 1,000 words, well, video's even worth even more. So we have the training set in place, we'll have the video set in place, but before we do that, we've been working with Christy on what is the communication going to be out to families before we would do any training or show any videos, and we'd actually send the video out probably and show that to parents so that they could, know what is coming. So I think if
And I can take this one if you want.
sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then we'll get questions if you've got. We're also working to update our crisis management plan. We're working with the Institute for Environmental Assessment, who we currently work with as part of our indoor environmental quality and hazardous materials and health and safety. So we've got a certified school risk manager who's helping us, giving us some input in some areas that we can improve to ensure that our emergency preparations are up to best practice, and making sure that we have uniform protocols in place. So we'll be working with that throughout the next couple of months as well, and update things for our staff and for administrators. So those are really the three areas that we've spent some time on this summer. Really grateful again to staff, to all staff, but particularly to Jim and John and Dan and other staff, Christy, who have spent a lot of time really taking a look at what are the best things for our students and for our district to make sure that our schools are as safe as possible. And people are really confident with what to do in case something were to happen. We're happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions for Dr. Lee?
You said that this will go out to the parents and there'll be communication to the community. How is that going to happen? And when will that happen? And will it be all about the Raptor system as well as the lockdown procedure or the options with lockdown? Could you give me some examples of where I can find it?
Sure. With the Raptor system, because that's going to launch the first day of school, that's going to be the first wave of communications that you're going to see. So principals have already started communicating that in their back-to-school letters and in their emails. I'll be following up with that with email communication from the district this week. We'll have it as a press release so the larger community knows about it. It'll be in the back-to-school newsletter that's mailed to the community. It's in handbooks, the posters, postcards. The Lockdown with Options, that communication plan is going to be rolled out a little bit later. As Dr. Bezek said, we really want to make sure that video is done first, because when you see it, it's about a 6-minute video, and it really explains it really, really well, and is a good summary of it that leads into the training and communication. So the communication for that will start a little bit later. And again, before we show that video to any students, we'll be showing it to parents first, so that they are aware of it. We'll be communicating that all in advance.
Because as a community member, would you go on the school district website to see that when it's up and running?
Yes, we will have it on our YouTube channel. I'm also working with Jim and Maureen on having a web presence for our crisis management plan, a summary of that. That would include Raptor, that would include the crisis management plan that Dr. Stahler referred to, of course, not all the details of the plan, but a general overview of that, and Lockdown with Options as well.
Thank you.
Yep.
And it's Stacy.
And then I just had a question. So all staff will be trained with Alice, or the combination, all staff basically?
Yeah, not the full Alice training.
No, but our
but the lockdown with option training.
modified version
Yep.
of it? Is it, so everybody's going to go through this? Every single staff member?
Yep, the plan is we want it to be a consistent training, so we're gonna work with our crew of people that were trained and pick a group of probably 3 or 4 of us along with the SRO that'll go around and talk to staff at every building. Before we would roll this out, we talk to the staff as well, and then we'd show them the video and do question and answer, and then get a plan for rolling it out to the students after the staff are trained. But yes, everybody, there'll be a plan to train everybody. We've been talking about how do we get everybody, because sometimes paras aren't at all the meetings. So
Right.
how do we get meeting scheduled so we can go around and do that at all buildings so that everybody hears a consistent message? And that's part of the nice piece of the video too, is that you're seeing a consistent, so we want everybody to have a consistent experience.
And then just one question, just from being the type of learner I am, is it going to be like site-specific? Meaning, are you gonna have
Yeah,
a scenario that
And
says,
I
like,
did
here's a
this in
great
a
place to
previous
hide
pla-
here? you know?
Previous district,
Yeah.
I was on the training team, and like myself and the SRO, when we would, the school resource officer, we would talk to people, and it was a general, and then what we said is, are there some specific questions? And we said, a lot of times people are gonna hear this and then they're gonna think about something, and if, at any time, if you wanna have us come back, or you wanna have the SRO come back, because you might say, oh, I work in the playground and I have this situation, or I have this, be happy to come back and answer questions, because you're always gonna think of, oh, what if this, you know, and
Right,
so
'cause there's so
it's gotta be an
many-
ongoing
right.
dialogue.
Right, I mean, there's just so many different
Yeah.
scenarios that you
You-
can imagine.
And the goal with this training is to empower staff.
Yep,
To say, in many cases, a lockdown is still the safest thing to
Right.
happen. But we know that there are those cases where we want to be sure that staff feel empowered to use their best judgment and to know that they have other options as well.
And a place for them to go if they, like you said, you have questions, maybe I switch, I'd like to know, what do I do in this situation, or I'm working out here. And you're talking to staff too about, you're thinking about your classroom, but what if, you're at, your class is at, you're in a different room, or you're at a meeting at the district
Yeah.
center, so it's just, again, getting yourself to be able to trust your judgment if something happened.
Melissa?
So the crisis management plan that you described is for, you said K through 12, or excuse me, for 6 through
Here's
12,
the
but what
thought
about for
process
the
on that, is that secondary students are a little, elementary and secondary students we feel are a little better able to handle, more self-directed. Elementary students in a lot of the trainings they're more apt to follow the lead of the teacher. And the video is a little more, you're not gonna tell an elementary student probably to swarm an intruder if it's your last resort or something like that. So you're gonna gear that, and the video's a little more geared towards secondary, where the video wouldn't probably be, well, it isn't geared to be shown to the elementary students. That's more training with teachers and telling the teachers how to direct the kids.
So we're working with the crisis management manager, actually, you called it a security risk manager, to understand the plan for elementary.
Nope, so we've kind of got three things going. So yes, and the crisis, the person that we're dealing with from IEA, that is our all of our crisis management, including the lockdown. But we're also looking at all of our protocols with that. So we're reviewing the entire emergency manual. But yeah, specifically to that lockdown with option, we'll have some differences with the elementary and the secondary.
But nothing will be rolled out to them right now?
Correct.
No videos for them or anything like that?
Correct.
Good. Okay, thanks.
Ben, any questions? Todd? I have one question, and maybe Christy or John. You talked about a government-issued ID. What happens if grandparents show up and want to have lunch with their students? Can you address how that will
That
happen?
was the training for tomorrow morning.
That's right. We're
Dr.
going to
Edwards.
talk about that tomorrow morning. So with regard to grandparent, our expectation, or any other relative for that matter, other than a parent, our expectation will be moving forward that the parent has made arrangements, or that the office has contacted, or that we will be in contact with that particular parent if there's a grandparent coming, or that parent informs us in advance that grandparent is coming in to have lunch with grandson or granddaughter. And we will be expecting photo ID, and there again, that's the importance of that. As Lee pointed out, the communication to the larger public, general public, website presence and in this district newsletter and such, that we will be requiring that ID. So it will be our expectation that parent will communicate that to grandparent, but they will have other opportunities to see that as well.
Okay, so there's no admission to the buildings without an ID.
And the other piece of that is in our training tomorrow, we up to the site administrator to work through that unique situation. So the office staff have been directed, or will be directed, if there's a unique scenario, that contact your building level administrator, and we'll work through that with the individuals involved.
Yeah, I understand that the processes are going to be perfect right out of the gate, so.
And that's that balance of, we want grandparents to come and have lunch with the grandkids, and we want parents to volunteer in our schools, and we want to make sure that we have a record of everyone who's in our building, and that we know that our visitors are safe. Once you've swiped your card, you are in the system. So there may be a time that I come to my classroom to volunteer. I'm already in the system, so if I don't have my ID, it still will show up that I'm in the system and that they can match it. So I'm not going to say that every single time you have to have your ID, because I'm going to be able to be in the system once that happens. But we're encouraging everybody to have that ID every time they come.
And the picture will pop up if you give the name. We type in, hand enter the name. The picture will pop up if they've previously presented us with an ID, and we can verify that.
I thought I heard previously that it was not going to save information. I thought that was on a document.
It saves name. Bring this back into the slide here. First name, last name, date of birth, partial ID number, so the last 4 digits of the ID, and a photo. That's what's maintained in the system. Okay. And secured via a password secured for the staff member who's monitoring that.
But it still gets checked each time.
It does. So when we did our school visits, we went to Burnsville, and I swiped my ID. If I had come back there another time and didn't have my ID, they would be able to check me against, the photo that they have of me and my name.
But
you
it is
get
running the check each time the
database.
name is typed
Yeah,
in.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yep,
Thank you.
it's running the check onto the.
The
site.
database,
Yep.
okay.
All right, any other questions?
No, I actually think, though, that I read something about it. It doesn't save the data. So somewhere there's a contradiction out there, and I can't remember where I read it, but I read that too.
Maybe it was in facilities meeting?
It doesn't, it saves the.
think it was there.
It saves the data. It's a third party. We're contracting with Raptor. Do you want to help me here?
I think some of the confusion is that it doesn't maintain or save a copy of the ID. Like, it doesn't screen grab that and then save it in the system. So that's not saved. It doesn't save social security number, personal characteristics, anything else that would be in a passport. Just those pieces of information so that they can be cross-checked next time they come in. But we wouldn't be able to get any other personal information other than what's listed.
Just can't remember where I read that, but it did say something about it does not save the information. And so wherever I read it, it must have been public enough that it
What
caused a little
we've
confusion.
communicated is that it does not save a copy of your ID. So when you put your ID through the scanner, it almost looks like it's taking a picture of it and saving it. We're not doing that.
Okay, that's what it's referring to then, maybe.
Maybe, that's where the confusion is. So in our training tomorrow, we're gonna make it clear that those are the pieces that are saved.
It could have been the Prior Like American that I read it.
Interesting.
Because I just read it this weekend, and it
Okay,
wasn't
I'll have to double check
on
that.
here. So we might need some clarification.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you. It might be to come back to the board with an update after the first month or two.
Yeah, that's a
and see
great
how
idea.
things are doing.
Yep, and I'm sure you're hearing things as well, and hopefully every reminder we have that anyone who wants to visit, bring your ID, and things will be just great.
All right. Next on the agenda is the approval of the resolution. I'm going to look to Martha real quick. I don't have to read the whole resolution, do I not? No, thank you. Oh, darn. Next on the agenda is a resolution relating to the election of school board members and calling for a school district general election on the 6th day of November 2018. So I will make that motion as presenter tonight for the approval of that resolution. Do I have a second?
Second.
By Lee. Is there any questions or comments? Seeing none, this is a resolution and must be approved by roll call vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I'm sorry, aye.
Stacy is an
Aye.
aye. And
I'm an
Lee.
aye.
Aye. Aye, that passes 6-0. Next on the agenda is the policy portion of tonight. It is the second and final readings for the policy listed. I'm going to look to the board on if you want to take these individually or if you want to do these as a group. I have one question on one of the policies, but I'm okay with. Okay.
Group.
Okay, so do I have a motion for the acceptance of all the policies as listed in our agenda?
So moved.
By Ben, do I have a second? Second by Melissa.
What was the one that you wanted to pull out?
515. I have a question. I did listen to the board study session, and I have talked to Mr. Mons about it. I guess the one question I have is, we pulled out several other policies list federal regulations or statutes that we must follow, but in this policy, we don't list any regulations that we have to follow. So my suggestion, I was asking if the board would be willing to list the FERPA and the Minnesota Data Privacy Act as reference documents.
Yeah, I think it's good if you can reference that.
Any other?
Nope.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So, with that do we have, is that an amended? No. So with that amended condition on the approval, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of adopting of the policy signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That passes 6-0. Next on the agenda is the administrative reports. Dr. Stalo.
Excellent, thank you very much. At Prior Lake Savage Area Schools, our mission is to educate all learners to reach their full potential as contributing and productive members of our ever-changing global community. And tonight, I'd like to just update you briefly on a bit of that work in which we've been engaged to help us achieve that mission. Matt had a chance to talk to us, to update us a little bit on where we are with enrollment, and I also did ask Julie for a little bit of an update as well. As Matt said, we are on track to meet or exceed our targeted October 1 enrollment numbers at the elementary level. He mentioned that as he talked about additional staffing that may be needed. In addition, at the middle school level, we're about 20 students short of our budgeted numbers at the middle school. Our 6th grade class is the largest it's ever been, with 724 students. However, that's also the grade level where we are short numbers, as we were expecting about 756 graders this year. So we'll see how those numbers continue to change in the next couple of weeks before school starts. We are over our budgeted numbers at Prior Lake High School by about 20 students. But by October 1, we expect our numbers to be pretty close to what we expected, because we will lose some of those kids in September that haven't told us, or their parents haven't told us, that they're moving. Julie Sink, our Executive Director of Business Services, will be giving the board another update on October 27th at our board study session, so you know exactly where we are with enrollment at that time. Just also, as we gear up for the start of the year, all of our departments and buildings have been busy getting ready for students and staff to start the new academic year. Last week, we held our administrative retreat, and this week on Wednesday, our building instructional leadership teams will meet at their data retreat to ensure that the strategies and action plans that they put in motion will be ready to be fulfilled and implemented as they reach their school goals. In addition, the district services staff has been full of professional development sessions, and as Jeff talked about, many design team meetings. Leaders are planning for their kickoff staff meetings, and we're looking forward to the start of the 2018-19 academic year. Also, I hope you've already read about this, but Prior Lake Savage Area Schools has been named as one of the best school districts in Minnesota by Nichigan this year, coming in at 14 out of 354 public schools. Prior Lake Savage Area Schools earn top grades in academics, teachers, college readiness, health and safety, and clubs and activities. So wanted to be sure to share that with you as well. Thank you.
All right, administrative reports, Mr. Holmberg.
Just one thing to point out, I did not mention in the report tonight around the work of Glendale and Five Hawks. Those projects are are on target. There's a lot of progress being made. There are teams of workers that are working around the clock and on weekends. So I know our buildings and ground staff has been very present in making sure that our facilities are open, that they can get in there and make some real significant progress, because we know that school is coming very, very shortly. We will give an update at our August 27th board work session. I would like to extend an invitation that I'm sure Mr. Delwo and I could do, if you'd like to meet at, we can put something out there. We could give you a quick tour of both facilities prior to the work session, if that would be something that would interest you. Otherwise, we can wow you with pictures and updates of the Five Hawks Glendale space. So we want to open that as well as an option, and we can put something together. I'll work with Dr. Stallo on what that could look like. Okay.
Yes, Dr. Stallo and I discussed that possibility before the study session, say at 5, meeting here, and then going to the two schools.
Okay.
Yeah, and then be back here by 6 for the start of the study session.
So we'll follow up at 5. Why don't we plan on that at 5 o'clock? We'll follow up with an email to see if that works for you, and if that time doesn't work for you, we'll certainly find another time. Thank you, Jeff.
All right. Any board reports? We'll start with Ben. Melissa? Board reports? Lee? None for me except that FLIRP, the Facilities and Finance Long Range Planning Committee, is scheduled to meet Wednesday of this week, correct? Okay, thank you. Charlotte?
I have a little bit of something. I'm going to share a little bit about what's going on at the high school. So today, students started gearing up a little bit more for school as all the fall sports began today, including tryouts for many sports like cross country, volleyball, football, which is showing us that the school year is right around the corner. Yesterday, our student council narrowed down our homecoming themes, and we are just waiting for approval to announce the theme. The homecoming game will take place on September 28th against Burnsville. The dance is September 29th. Other events that are coming up soon are welcoming our teachers back on August 27th. We have a new student and foreign exchange student pizza party, which is also on the 27th. And then freshman orientation begins on August 29th. So we'll be welcoming many people to our school. And then we're all getting ready for the school, and I hope all of our students are ready for a good year.
Thank you. Todd?
AMSD met on Friday where we heard an update with Dr. Salo about the Cruz Guzman lawsuit that got kicked back from the Supreme Court back to the appellate courts. So that'll be being processed through. It's unknown where that will go, what the arguments are in that. We kind of heard both sides of the story from the attorneys that were there. And then they have their local legislative platform. So if there's anything that we need to add to AMSD to add to their platform, I think we already still have our goals that we presented to our legislators back in the spring, because it was January. And I think those are the things we'll submit to AMSD. So.
All right, with that, seeing no more further business before the board, I ask for a motion for the adjournment of the meeting. By Ben, and for a second?
Second.
By Lee. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? That passes 6-0. Thank you.